Hello, welcome back to another episode of Running Profitable Retreats. And today I'm so excited to actually have Jessyca Eves here with me. She is a yoga and healing educator, and I won't tell you much more because I want her to really tell you a little bit more about what she does and all the beautiful things that she's going to be sharing with us about retreats today. So thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to chat and to share a bit and to be here today.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about what do you consider is very important when you are running retreats? Because I know you run retreats in Mexico and Costa Rica.
Yes. Yeah, there's a few things to consider. I've been running retreats since, I guess, 2015 in different places around the world. Now I am more localized to Mexico and Costa Rica, but the things to consider are more or less the same. And one thing I think is at the forefront is deciding who you're going to offer your retreat to. And I think this is a really important and beautiful process to go through as you start to decide what kind of experience you want to curate.
Wow, yeah, I totally agree. Like the reality is if you don't know who you're selling your retreat to, how can you find them? How can they find you? How can anything happen, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the reality is if you don't know who you're selling, you're probably not selling to anyone. And this is a big, as I've, you mentioned, I work with yoga teachers and there's a lot of disillusionment around the idea that we can just fill these events with just happenstance or magic or hope.
Mm.
And what I call the avatar, the ideal client avatar, is a really important aspect to consider. So to take some real time to develop an image of this individual, what their demographics are, and to go a little bit further and really kind of decide what are their needs, what are their pain points, and what could the experience that you're offering solve. And this is also really key. And I think the idea of retreats is very different, even what this word conjures up for us post, I hate to keep talking about it sometimes, but COVID, the idea of getting on a plane and traveling to a new country and leaving your home doesn't sound like retreating. And we need to really give a little bit more value to what the customer's journey will be like, what the challenges might be, what they need from the experience, what you can offer, what you can solve for them. So creating that and connecting to and understanding your ideal client avatar is really key. And oftentimes, you might be collaborating with others, but if you're sort of in the lead or taking that decision or that direction, oftentimes that avatar, that client that you're best serving, is likely really connected to who you are or what your journey was in all of this work. So it's
Oh
quite
my
easy,
gosh.
what I'm
Yes.
saying, to connect to them.
I love this. I actually like so many times I'm having conversation with like my students. I always tell them you're like basically focused on that you're teaching someone that is like 5 steps behind you, right? Like you are creating a retreat for an old version of you, and you're creating this retreat based on what would you what wanted to have or actually experienced that allowed you to go these 5 steps forward, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And so we can speak with confidence and with credibility, and we've seen results. We have a lot that we can bring then to the experience. And it also really, not only does it make it brings us into a space of our real embodiment as the leader. Okay.
Mm.
And then it really creates a trajectory of crystal clear marketing, that can
Mm.
run crystal clear marketing. But then it also, if you run retreats, that sometimes, and it all does, it's all divinely designed, but you do sometimes get outliers in the group. And I'm always happy if there's someone that, isn't quite the match or isn't quite the ideal client. But if they do sometimes, unfortunately, take away from the group or take away from the direction or the energy or the intention or the level maybe of the group, This is also deserving and can create challenges. And, it could even be the type of customer they are, what kind of accommodations, if you're doing something more rustic and they're fussy, by creating a very crystal clear client, and an outcome for them, it can offset a lot of the other challenges that you might face. So some of those other challenges would be like sequencing and theming. If you have a clear audience, you can really hone in and creating a very thematic and serving experience, because it's like, if you were a chef and you're like, I'm going to cook for you this week, and you just have everybody and every diet type and every quiz, ethnic flavor preference coming, it's like, oh God, I can't please everybody, or I'm not going to be able to do my best. But if you say, I'm going to be cooking for this kind of diet type or this cuisine, and people are coming for that, then you have a nice agreement arrangement, and you can create the best product essentially, and the process is easier, so it's win-win. And also having that ideal client allows you to have a continuation, and this is also something that I encourage people who, I know that there's probably a bit of range of people who are watching this, like listening, interested in starting retreats or just want to get better at it. And, if you already have a client base and you've been doing it for a while, creating aftercare programs, opportunities, and evergreen opportunities, so people who come to your retreats have somewhere else to go. The journey continues for them. So maybe then what's the fourth step? As you've said, they're 5 steps behind you. What would you give them if they were 4 or 3 then? And to be thinking, if you can have that foresight, it can also be a selling point to have them know they have another place to go after this.
Like, one of my backgrounds is loyalty marketing, right? And we always say that loyal customers spend 67% more than non-loyal customers. This is such a huge number. And people sometimes are like, what are you like, is this for real? And it's so real. Like, I've seen it firsthand. And because of this, I can tell absolutely everyone here that if you continue this guest journey when you are hosting a retreat, and in between retreats, they have the opportunity to keep working with you in one way or another. You get to choose how it looks like. There is no magical formula, right?
Yep.
But then you do that, and then it doesn't become this person who suddenly just shows up every 3 months with a new retreat, or once a year, or every 6 months, or as often as you do retreats. And then people are like, okay, so this person is only coming back and like talking to me or caring about me when they're trying to sell something, right? Does this feel like really creating like a relationship with your customer? Because really, loyalty marketing is all about customer retention and customer experience, and it's all about the customer. It's not about the business, it's all about the customer, right? So it's so important to be able to provide this, right, when
Absolutely.
you are doing it.
No, absolutely. This has been a big aha moment for me in my last 2 years. I'm also at the point in my business where I do have quite a few customers to bring into that kind of loyalty relationship, and it has been very abundant and very successful. And in any industry and in any major business, there is a lot of money spent and a lot of marketing spent on keeping your customers. And so if we're offering events, one-off events, and that also is that there's some sort of perverse and subtle mindset of the hustle in this industry, like, okay, next event, I'm going here, I'm going there. And I'm all for being not so rigid and planning and controlling and mapping out every moment of our calendar. But I do feel that there's a sort of a redirective energy in the industry around the spiritual practice and energy, that we shouldn't be so affirmative and direct and planning ahead. And what this what this translates to in a mindset of living our lives, in our living our business life, is that we're just in that hustle, next event. And so a lot of us don't put in the mechanism. I know I didn't, again, speaking to me 5-6 steps back.
Mhm.
Okay. I didn't put some of those mechanisms in of like, okay, you've got to have the follow-up email ready after the retreat because you're exhausted, they're exhausted, and then a couple of days go by and you don't have that. Or so to just plan it out a little bit more and to plan out opportunities to connect with them, like you said, to nourish that relationship, and to plan, because as you're planning their journey, you're also planning your business journey, and it's serving. If you have more of a plan as a professional, then you have more of a capacity to help people. And I think sometimes we shy away from some of those like commitments and long-term plans or visions, and maybe again because we're kind of shrinking from even our own power or possibility there. But that's probably for another topic.
But it's so true, everything that you're saying. Like I work with a lot of people in the spiritual world that they want to do the healing, right? They want to do all the beautiful practices, but they don't want to have a business setup behind, or they don't want to take care of like the website, these funnels, these kind of things. But if you want to scale your business, right, and you want to be able to show up to the world and to have more clients and to help more people and have basically bigger impact in the world, you need to have it. And it doesn't mean you need to go exactly and yourself learn how to build a website, right? Because it might not be in your best interest. But you do need to make sure that you have either a website or a funnel, or you have all the steps, or you have like just FAQs prepared for your retreats, right? That they are evergreen and they work for every single retreat that you do. Like I give this customized program that is like for building a retreat business, right? And it's the whole piece about how it is different to have a retreat business where your front door, it's retreats, right? And then your back end is all these additional programs, but it's not like a retreat leader that really, it's an add-on offer to what they're already doing, right? Like if you're a yoga teacher, you're teaching yoga classes, and then you're having maybe yoga master classes, and maybe, I don't know, you're also something else. And then you do like, I don't know, cacao ceremonies. And then every 3 months, you add into your offerings a retreat. It's completely different than being a retreat business where everyone walks through the door because they're looking to go into a retreat, right? And then how does that affect the ecosystem of your business? Because it's absolutely different. It's like, how do you take people through the guest journey? How do you offer the different things? And also, like, so many people do this because they're like, I want to travel the world and I want to do retreats all over the world, but they don't realize that it has so much work. So you might want to start with like a couple of locations the first year, and then just, copy, paste, and repeat. And then next year you add another location, you go, you nail it, you experience it, you see how it works. And then the next year another one, and then suddenly you do have a retreat business that has 12 retreats around the world in different places each single month of the year, and it's perfectly fine. But if you want to overcompensate and just like travel for the whole year and then say, hey, in November I'm going to be in Mexico, so I'm doing a retreat there. In December I'm going to be here and I'm going to have a retreat there. And then you keep like, basically you build your retreats based on personal gain, right? It's not coming from the heart. It's not coming from the service. It's not what you want to offer to other ones.
1000%. Yep.
Right? It is
Absolutely.
then coming from a place of lack of like, I want someone to pay for my holidays because I won't pay for them myself. And how do I do this? Right? It's funny, but it's so true. Like I've seen it so often. They're like, oh, I want to go to Mexico. Like I had someone, I was like, I gave her a session and she was like, I'm doing a retreat in Mexico. She was coming all the way from Australia. The reality, she struggled during her own leading her own retreat because like she faced the fact, right, that she was doing it because she wanted to come and travel in Mexico for 3 months, and then this would pay for her the rest of her trip. Is this really like doing it because you want to serve the women? Like, is this really coming from a place of love and abundance and excitement and service? It's kind of like thinking about just serving yourself and then everyone else just being a pawn in your play. So it's so important. And I know I'm like going very like deep on this, but
No,
for me, it's like I'm so passionate about this. I'm like, if you want to do something, do it from the heart. And then the money will come. It's fine.
I absolutely agree. And I also believe, I mean, I know that, money is very impersonal. We know there's a lot of awful people that have a lot of money, but I do believe in this kind of industry, and eventually those kinds of practices are just not sustainable. I mean, if you have a certain look or you have some, some really incredible offer, I mean, it can be trendy or appealing at first, but, that kind of like, this one story that you're sharing, I mean, I can't imagine that she's going to be able to sustain that. That's what I tell when I graduate yoga teachers, who sometimes, there'll sometimes be groups that have amazing teachers and then some not amazing teachers, and or students along the way, that weren't as dedicated, that didn't take it as serious. And sometimes the students that are really 100% in the heart, they're getting the same piece of paper as the student who is sometimes checking the boxes, showing up but not really clicking all the way. It can be it's delicate in this industry with that certificate, right? And I do offer some aftercare and mentorship, but ultimately we know that that teacher, I mean, they're only going to be able to not be in the heart and skilled for so long, before people just stop coming, before they really, imposter syndrome is it's a phenomenon we all have, but sometimes it really is that inner red flag that's saying like, hey, you are not aligned, and so
yeah,
I do feel like,
sometimes it's not imposter syndrome, it's just hiding as imposter
yeah,
syndrome. It's just
the reality is you're misaligned, you're not in it with your heart, you're not being, as authentic as you claim to be, or the reasons or the intention. So I do feel, while those things can still be successful financially, I feel eventually they'll run their course.
yeah, or they get bored out of it and they'll figure something else to do because they're like, well, this is not really fulfilling anymore, because
Absolutely.
basically they were never really taking care of like having an overflowing cup, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, there was a lack, and so the retreat is just a new hobby or a new, it's like the tourism, they're like a spiritual tourist, or that kind
Yeah,
of
100%. Yeah,
phrase.
yesterday we were having actually this exact conversation. We were talking about how many people are now like the way my brother says it, it's like, so the students have become the teachers. So all of the people who used to go to his retreats then became the students, right? And then it's like so interesting because we're talking about all the different ways on how like this is not great, right? Because like they're just doing it because they can, and now everyone is in the business and they don't really have the practice and knowledge, the time or anything behind that allows them to really be a professional teacher. You know what I mean?
I do. I mean, and again, as someone who trains, it can be a real struggle for me. And, I have a few things that swirl in my head for that. The first is like when I was, I took it seriously for sure. I wasn't not dedicated, but I wasn't overly with it as a student. In my first training, I'm sure if you polled the people in the room, none of them would think I would be where I am right now. None of them would think I've taught 15,000 hours and have, a 200 and a 300-hour school, and the skills and the knowledge, and the continued practice. So there is, I do feel that, and we know with all this energy stuff that time and that kind of stuff really doesn't have so much value always. Like, I do think that a young person can come in and really change things up and really be a teacher, but it is being diluted. Absolutely. It's definitely being diluted. And, I do believe that this process is a living, breathing. What I mean by the process is like student teacher transmission and training, and it is getting saturated. It is definitely a saturate. When I started my school 6 years ago, and I had no idea how many people had taken yoga teacher training. Like I had start to quit my job. And I remember Googling the statistics and then starting to like reach into my network of like who might want to take a yoga teacher training with me. And like everybody I knew, people I didn't even think did yoga, had taken a training before. I was like, what? I mean, that was a while ago. And now, you can buy it for like $99 online. Like what? Like
Yeah.
what? But it's, so it is a living, breathing tradition. It's changing. Thank God it's living, breathing tradition, because us women now are a part of it. It wasn't that way before. So, there's to absorb it and to notice some of these areas that it is being diluted. But I also feel one of the things I wanted to say is that, I do some specialized trainings as well. And there's always this element of just like, what is space holding? And it doesn't have to be like this work is bigger than us.
Mm-hmm.
And, as you said, like if we're in it for our heart and in it to help people, our shortcomings, our maybe lack of experience, is going to be compensated for the power of the practice. And I also find that less is more. So the two sort of advice pieces I was going to speak to that kind of connect here is, I know when I first started doing my retreats, I really wanted people to feel like they had such value and their day was just so packed with and the feedback that I would get would be, less stuff, less yoga, less like, I don't want to do 2 90-minute classes a day on a retreat, lady. Like, no, so less is more, and even less formal things, and going back, what I call like go old school. I was a school teacher for years and a curriculum designer. Think about the activities you did, like the games you played as a kid, the community builders you did. Pinterest is a great place to find those kinds of activities. Even things if you grew up in a church group, that you would do, and small things, writing, like things that aren't prolific, shamanic,
Yeah, going
ceremonial.
back to basics.
Yeah, cacao, that, it's just the basic stuff can be super powerful. And especially if you know your group. If you know your group and you can have some really thematic and simple, sweet experiences for them. I do think that there is opportunity for people to not necessarily step into the role of teacher. There's a lot of what we, a lot of what we see, I joke too, is a little bit of like Simon Says, if we're talking about like, let's say yoga classes, it's like, just do this. No one's teaching you anything, like, so same thing at a retreat. There may not need to be a transmission of knowledge, let's say, but this idea of holding space, of holding space and allowing the healing, or the let's say healing, depending on what the intention of the retreat is, but we'll kind of put it under the umbrella of healing. The healing is a natural process. So we just have to hold space for it to happen.
I love this, and it's so important, because I do believe that sometimes, so many times we want to overdo it. We're like, oh my gosh, if they have like 2 hours free, are they gonna like, go wild, or what's gonna happen? And the reality is that for me, really the magic happens in the space, in like, in between the sessions. Is that where really like the breakthrough comes, right? Like if you are listening to, let's say, me talking about loyalty marketing, right? The reality that you're gonna be listening, but then the realization of like how you can implement that in your business is gonna come when you are spending some time by the garden, just taking some notes, and then, or writing something, and then suddenly you'll be like, oh my gosh, this is the way I want to do it. And that's the magic, because you're not really doing things from a place of like, just because everyone else is doing it.
No, absolutely. I think the space that these experience give, it is the experience a lot of times. I mean, I don't want to sell anyone's content down, including my own. I mean, I have some real, tools and strategies and that I can share, but it is the space. It is the space and the experience that is of the extreme value, and the access to you or to me. So if I'm in that garden and I get this moment, that I then have access to go back to you and say like, hey, so you were talking about loyalty marketing and I just had this moment, and and it's again that, that evolution that we get to have together, this evolving constellation that we have in the space. So yeah, it's they can be really, really powerful containers. And I do feel that sometimes the more novice teacher, or again, because it is a little bit, tongue in cheek, like, oh, we've got another, I think we joked last time we talked, like, oh, another 22-year-old shaman, amazing, offering, so I was sharing this space once, and we were doing yoga teacher training, and we're hard, we're hard on training, right? And it's, we're really pretty like disciplined and strict, I guess, is the two words I'd put to that. And then there was this plant medicine ceremony or a retreat that happened in 7 days, and I think they had 11 plant ceremony, medicine, deep medicines, because what you're eating is plant medicine, but anyway, deep medicine ceremonies in 7 days, and there was like no room for integration. It was like a festival happening, over there. And it's a little bit like, oh, okay, so you see different expressions, different intentions. You might see things in the industry that make us feel a little bit like, all right, well, that's not where I hope it continues to go, or that's not the work I'm trying to promote. But the reality is, the healing happens for all different shapes and sizes of people, with all different, kind of journeys and paths. And I think that sometimes these less experienced people can certainly, or teachers can certainly hold really transformative spaces. And this is again what you said about the customer or the client, because it ultimately really isn't about us. I believe we should be, in a space of our purest, highest self as a vessel, and that intention for sure. But as we also were talking about marketing, a lot of times people are selling the event, right? Or them, like, the modalities, you're gonna get ice baths and you're gonna get this. No one cares. No one cares really of what they're gonna do. Sometimes they don't even know, or they think it's this other thing, and they say, you say sound healing and they think brass bowls, but I got a gong. I mean, they don't know, or the marketing and the message and the magic is not actually about us. It's about them. So so it's what the retreat is going to give them, what they're going to walk away, not what they need to, why they want to walk in it. Okay. Is not all the things we're going to do. It's, they want to walk into it because of how they're going to walk out of it. And it's the same in the space, that again, it's really about giving them the space.
I love this. I think this is so powerful. It's like really, really important. And I think it's like a great message to like finish our conversation in this way, because it's like, so like really it's like bringing it back to everything that we've been speaking, and how I feel everything connected very beautiful in this way of like, really when you're doing something, you think about your client, and then how does that affect every single thing that you do, and then how at the end of the day, once again, it's all about the client, it's all about like the transformation, it's all about the results, it's all about what they're getting out of it, right? If it's just like a retreat to relax, like where they're doing nothing and that's what they need, they're gonna come because they are looking for this thing specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much. It's been nice to share.
How can people find you?
Yeah, well, please, they can find me on everything is With Grace and Joy. So Instagram, With Grace and Joy, they're the names of my daughters. My website is withgraceandjoy.com, and also on Facebook, you can find me there. I also run a private Facebook group mentoring yoga teachers and healers, what I call new paradigm visionaries. And so we talk about how to make money in the industry, some of the disillusionment and the challenges that we face in this industry. And so that's a really great space to find me. So you can just find me kind of all over social media, Jessyca Eve, also on YouTube. And offering some one-on-one coaching for women in the industry, as well as offering the 200, 300, and 500-hour yoga teacher trainings in Mexico and Costa Rica this year and next.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for everyone listening. I hope you found this information very useful, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye. Oh my gosh, it's the beginning of 2024 and we're starting season 2 of how to run profitable retreats. Let's jump into this amazing session with Jessyca, that she's your go-to gal if you want to learn how to become a yoga teacher and do it in beautiful and amazing locations across the world. So thank you so much for joining.
let's go and listen in. And as always, there's an invitation. If you have this deep calling inside of you to host profitable retreats that are also heart-centered, go check out my program, Mastering the Art of Retreat Planning. The intakes are open for our February program. And it's going to be such an amazing, beautiful, and cohesive program where so many people are going to join. And we're going to be able to create this in a way that it's so tailored to your needs, because the way I run my business is in a boutique style. So you get tons of me, tons of support from everyone else joining this program. Go and check out the website. You can find the link below in the caption. All right. Now let's go and listen to the interview with Jessyca. Bye.